With that, we bring in Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former CIA director under President Trump, and a Fox News contributor. Secretary Pompeo, good to have you with us today. Your reaction, as we hear now from the Supreme Leader in the form of this statement. You heard what he said about the United States president and about his take on this deal. What's your reaction?
Well, Martha, it's great to be with you. I think it's interesting that now this is the first time we've actually heard from him. He's clearly feeling safer as a result of this, feeling like he can now move about the cabin like the old Southwest Airlines line. Second, it pretty clearly demonstrates that the Iranian regime is fractured and doesn't have a unitary position, kind of handed it over to the president and said, but we're not going to do what you say anyway. So not clear to me that we have an agreement with the Iranian regime that matters most, the IRGC and its leaders, but I suppose only time will tell with respect to that, Martha.
Here's what Vice President Vance said about the key differences between this deal, this agreement of understanding, and the JCPOA under President Obama. Let's watch.
The Obama nuclear deal allowed enrichment. Ours will not. The Obama deal allowed the accumulation of stockpiled weapons-grade material. Ours is actually leading to the destruction of that stockpile of enriched material. So there are many differences. The Obama deal gave them over $1 billion of American money. This deal gives them $0 of American money.
So he also said that this creates a wall in Iran against the enrichment of uranium and nuclear weapons. Do you agree with that? And you've gone through this thing point by point. Explain to us your assessment of this deal. Is it a good deal or not?
Well, there's some things that the Vice President said that I think are true. This is different than the JCPOA materially, largely because of the hard work that's been done by our military under President Trump. Right? We have decimated their economy, their military, and their capability, but we haven't eliminated it. There's also some things there that just don't make any sense to me. To somehow think that because they've written down on a piece of paper something they've promised for decades that they won't build a nuclear weapon, that's foolish at best. There's three M's, right? Mm-hmm. We now are going to say it's okay for them to have missiles. We're going to allow them to have money, and the Vice President said no American money. You know, Martha, it doesn't matter if it's American money or not. They're not going to use it to build a healthcare system. The sanctions relief that we're about to provide them is going to give them billions of dollars, and they'll rebuild many of their programs. And so that's the second M. That's a mistake. And the third one is this idea that somehow there are Iranian moderates. There's no such thing. These are all radical Islamists. And so only time will tell how this agreement will play out and what really happens on the ground. But to think because the Iranians have signed a piece of paper saying that they won't procure a nuclear weapon or that they'll leave the Strait of Hormuz open and won't use their continued leverage, their ability to put mines in the water in the Strait of Hormuz, that would be a mistake in the agreement to sort of decide that, well, that's okay given all the work that we've done so far and with all the leverage that we have as it sits today.
This is just a still shot from the president speaking yesterday in France, and behind him were Howard Lutnick and the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and there was a lot of response that Marco Rubio looked a bit glum watching over all of this. We've all seen sort of the Vance side of the equation and the Rubio side of the equation in foreign policy and where they both stand. What's your reaction to sort of the demeanor of the Secretary of State yesterday, and that we haven't really heard from him about this?
Martha, having been in a lot of videos and people made statements about the looks on my face, I don't put a whole lot of stock in that necessarily. I do know that Secretary Rubio was very clear just a few weeks ago when he talked about their missile program, the Iranian missile program, as being a central feature of the effort that we were undertaking. The reason that we went to war was they were building up a conventional weapon system that could have protected what would have been an emerging nuclear weapons program. And so to the extent that somehow we now have decided that it's okay for the Iranians to have missiles and somehow they will have access to the money to go rebuild that program, whether that's over 6 months or 6 years, I don't think that's something the Secretary Rubio would find consistent with what he had said previously.
So it's clear that the president wanted to get the Strait open. He has concerns, obviously, about the U.S. economy and the global economy. He talked about not wanting to be Herbert Hoover. How do you assess the decision that the president has made here, that this is the best course he obviously believes at this point in all of this? It doesn't say that we're not going to get more down the road.
Well, if we're actually prepared to go at it, to give a little bit of time to figure this out and see if the Iranians for after 40 years have changed their colors, which I think is exceedingly unlikely, but perhaps it's true. That seems fine to me. But you must really be serious about this. You must be determined to go take down the Iranian capability. If it's a bluff, if you think they're going to believe the bluff, if you're going to extend these negotiations indefinitely, the Iranians will do, Martha, what we have seen the Iranians do. They've killed thousands of Americans. They will go right back at this. I've seen no indication that Iranian leadership, whether it's the Ayatollah himself or the IRGC, I've seen no indication that they all of a sudden don't believe that the great state in the United States of America has a right to exist. And so any agreement that you sign with them must be through force and power, not through thinking somehow, hopefully beyond all hope, that somehow the Iranian regime is fundamentally going to change its ways without a regime that is fundamentally different than the one that was there before Epic Fury and before Midnight Hammer.
So President Trump had some very strong words for Bibi Netanyahu yesterday. He obviously is not happy with the action that Israel has taken in Lebanon. And the 1-2 punch came from the vice president today, J.D. Vance, in his statements. Here's what he had to say about Israel. Watch.
Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. The defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up.
What's your take on all that, sir?
Well, Israel's biggest problem is, in fact, the Iranian regime. And it's an Iranian regime with missiles and money. And without the leverage that we have gained, right, putting the Israeli people at risk. And when it comes to Lebanon is a sovereign nation. It is not a tool of the Iranian regime. That's what frankly, President Obama and President Biden allowed to happen. They let Hezbollah essentially be the governing force inside of Lebanon. Israel's not going to stand for missiles killing their people in the northern part of the country. They're going to do the necessary to protect themselves. And it is deeply in the United States' interest to support Israel in that effort.
I mean, obviously, oil prices have been a concern across the country, gas prices heading into the summer. You know, does it make sense to you that the president would want to push the relief valve on some of this in the short term?
Absolutely. We all want American energy dominance and low energy prices for our manufacturers, for our families, so they can drive and go on their vacations. We absolutely all want lower energy prices. But to somehow think that you're going to kick this can down the road and this is going to be resolved because the Iranian regime is going to be fundamentally different, I think that's a mistake. So if this is for a moment, if this is for to get some relief so that we can rearm, retool, get some crude oil flowing, I wouldn't let the Iranians get a single nickel from their oil. I would make sure that the Strait of Hormuz was open. Remember, CENTCOM told us on, I think it was June 11th, that the Strait was open. We should get the Strait back open, get energy moving again across the world, get energy prices low here in America, but continue to put pressure on the Iranian regime. It is not impossible to do both of those at the same time. Indeed, President Trump had begun to do that.
Well, we've entered the period where Iran has an opportunity to prove whether or not they are a, quote, normal country. And as you've witnessed for a long time, we haven't seen that. But there's always the possibility that we may see something different. We'll see. Thank you very much, Secretary Pompeo. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Martha. Have a good afternoon.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.